Okay, so we're diving into a career today that I have to admit I didn't know much about before
Yeah.
dance therapy.
Hmm.
And you provided some really interesting RoleCatcher excerpts about it.
Right.
And looking at these, I'm realizing it's a lot more profound than I initially pictured.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this field goes way beyond just like the physicality of dance, and it
Yeah.
really taps into the emotional and the mental aspects as well.
Yeah.
And I think what's so striking is that it uses that creative expression to achieve those therapeutic goals.
Right. And like I pictured, a bit of feel the music, shake it out, which
Right.
don't get me wrong, that has its place.
Sure.
But this guide mentions things like body awareness and self-esteem,
Right.
not your typical dance class outcomes.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of dance therapy, is that it's not about necessarily perfecting a routine.
Yeah.
It's about how can we use movement to address those maybe deeper issues.
Mm.
It's about how do our bodies hold on to emotions and different experiences.
So it's less about like teaching dance steps and more about kind of decoding the language of movement.
Yeah, you could say that. And that requires a really unique skill set.
Yeah.
The guide emphasizes these therapists need to have social perceptiveness, active listening,
Yeah.
a deep understanding of psychology.
Right.
And so those are core counseling skills,
Right.
just as important as their dance background.
Yeah. It makes sense. This is clearly like a specialized field
Yeah.
within healthcare, not just like a fun side gig.
Absolutely. And, like many fields in healthcare, it's constantly evolving.
Right.
I mean, think about how much our understanding of just the mind-body connection has grown even in the last, 5 to 10 years.
Totally.
Dance movement therapy is right there on the cutting edge.
Okay, so no Zumba then.
Well,
They're kidding. I'm kidding.
maybe a little Zumba.
Okay. Now I'm really curious, like what does a dance therapist actually do during a session?
So the guide, really lays out their responsibilities. And it's just like other therapists.
Okay.
They have to assess their client's needs,
Mm.
create that personalized therapy plan,
Okay.
incorporating movement, and then they monitor their progress.
So there's a structure to it.
Yeah.
It's not all just free-flowing interpretive dance.
Right.
Although a part of me is still picturing a therapy session where someone's like waltzing around instead of talking on a couch.
You're not far off.
Okay.
The idea is that this movement can help unlock things that maybe words sometimes can't.
Right.
It helps people communicate and understand themselves on a deeper level.
Wow. That's really amazing.
Right.
So what kind of people are drawn to this type of therapy?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the guide mentions anxiety, depression, chronic pain, even physical disabilities.
What a huge range.
It's a very diverse, group of people that would be drawn to this. And the guide even talks about how they've used mirroring exercises
Oh,
to
wow.
help someone with social anxiety become more comfortable with physical closeness,
Wow.
which I think is fascinating.
That's amazing. I never would have thought about that.
And it makes you realize that everyone, regardless of like their background or any challenges, can potentially benefit from exploring movement in this way.
Precisely. It's about tapping into that universal language of the body.
This is already blowing my mind, and we're just scratching the surface.
Right.
I'm really interested to hear more about like the specifics of this therapy.
Absolutely. And one thing that stood out to me in the guide was Laban movement analysis.
Laban movement. What now?
Have you heard of this?
Okay, tell
Oh.
me more. This sounds very intriguing.
So Laban movement analysis is really fascinating.
Okay.
It's basically this method where therapists break down movement into its core components.
Okay.
So think of it like analyzing the grammar of a sentence,
Right.
but for movement.
Okay, interesting.
So instead of looking at whether someone's doing like a pirouette correctly,
Right.
you're noticing the nuances of how they move, even in everyday gestures.
So it's like even if I'm just like picking up my coffee cup,
Exactly.
something to analyze there.
There's a quality to it. The guide mentions things like, is the quality of the movement fluid, or is it jerky?
Okay.
Is it direct or indirect?
Oh.
The space they use, their rhythm, all of these things can offer really interesting insights into someone's emotional state.
That's wild. So even without saying a word, our bodies are constantly communicating.
Yes.
Oh man, this is making me like hyper aware of how I'm sitting right now. Like, should I uncross my legs?
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
It really is.
And it makes you realize how dance movement therapists are trained to see beyond the surface.
Yeah.
Is really looking for those nonverbal cues, those hidden tensions, or those bursts of energy that might reveal something deeper.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see why this career guy really emphasizes the need for both that dance experience,
Right.
but also that solid psychology background.
Right. You have to have both.
It's like a therapist who also speaks body language fluently.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And speaking of career paths, the guide talks about the different settings where dance therapists work.
Yep.
It's not limited to just private practice,
Okay.
which, a lot of people might think of.
Right. Like you would just go to someone's studio.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
But it's not just limited to that.
So where else are these skills in demand?
We're seeing them in hospitals,
Wow.
rehabilitation centers, mental health clinics,
Okay.
even schools are starting to recognize the benefit of integrating movement and this creative expression into their programs.
That makes sense when you think about it, especially with kids.
Yeah.
Sometimes they might not have the words to express what they're going through,
Exactly.
but dance could be such a powerful outlet.
Absolutely. And even for people recovering from injuries,
Oh, yeah.
it's not just about, regaining physical function,
Mm-hmm.
but it's about reconnecting with their bodies, rebuilding that confidence.
It's like that saying, the body keeps the score.
Yes,
Like all of that trauma and stress, it's all stored in our bodies.
it is.
So this seems like a way to kind of release that in a healthy way.
You've hit on something crucial here. The guide talks about how dance movement therapy can be incredibly effective for helping people process trauma,
Wow.
manage anxiety, even help them cope with chronic pain.
So it's not just for people with severe mental health diagnoses.
Right.
It could also just be a tool for anyone who's like, I'm feeling stressed. I want to understand my emotions better.
Exactly. It's about empowering people to really tap into those inner resources through movement.
That's really cool.
And one thing I found really interesting was how this can benefit individuals,
Mm-hmm.
but it can also benefit groups
Oh, yeah.
and even entire communities.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, the guy did talk about group therapy sessions.
Right.
What does that look like? Is everyone just like dancing it out together?
It's a little more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's not about choreography or performance at all.
Okay.
The focus is on creating that safe and supportive environment
Yeah.
where people can connect with themselves and with each other through movement.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like just that idea that something as simple as moving together can foster such a sense of connection and understanding.
It's really incredible. And it speaks to that innate human need for connection
Yeah.
and for expression. I mean, whether it's through words or music or art or
Mhm.
movement,
Right.
we all have a story to tell.
Totally.
And sometimes our bodies can tell that story in ways that words never could.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's making me want to ditch this microphone and go find the nearest dance studio.
Right.
Maybe we should both give it a try.
We should.
But before we get ahead of ourselves,
Right.
there's one more aspect of dance therapy that I think we should touch upon,
Okay.
which is this whole idea of like the ethical considerations
Yes, very important.
that come with being a dance therapist.
Yeah. The guide really emphasizes, maintaining those professional boundaries,
Right.
respecting client confidentiality,
Mm.
and even engaging in ongoing self-reflection
Mm.
to prevent bias from coming into their practice.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, especially with such a personal and vulnerable form of therapy.
Right.
Like those ethical considerations are just essential for creating that safe and trusting therapeutic relationship.
Absolutely. It just emphasizes how seriously dance therapists take their responsibility
Right.
to really create that safe and supportive environment for their clients.
This deep dive has like really opened my eyes to the depth and breadth of this field.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious to know more about what it takes to actually become a dance therapist.
Okay.
Like what kind of training and qualifications are we talking about?
That's a great question. And it's something that the RoleCatcher guide explores in detail.
Okay.
It highlights the importance of having that strong foundation in both dance and in therapeutic practices.
So you're not just like a great dancer.
Right.
You need to have that formal education.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So aspiring dance therapists typically pursue a master's degree in dance movement therapy
Okay.
from an accredited program. And these programs really delve into areas like psychology, human development counseling techniques,
Right.
and of course the therapeutic application of dance and movement.
It sounds like a demanding program,
It is.
but incredibly rewarding for those who are passionate about it.
You said it. It's a field that attracts those who are naturally empathetic, creative, and just deeply committed to making a difference in the lives of others.
It's fascinating to think that this career path kind of combines those two passions so beautifully.
It really does.
Yeah.
Now, beyond the educational requirements,
Okay.
the guide also stresses the importance of gaining practical experience.
So it's not enough to just read about it in a textbook.
Right, you have to get out there.
You got to do it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It talks about the value of internships, volunteering, seeking out mentorships with experienced dance therapists.
Oh, yeah. I can see how that hands-on experience would be invaluable for developing your skills
Absolutely.
and building your confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then as you progress in your career, the guide emphasizes continuous professional development.
That makes sense. Like in any healthcare field,
Right.
things are always evolving.
Always. There's
Yeah.
new research.
New research, new techniques all the time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
got to stay on top of it.
So it sounds like a career path that demands a lot,
It does.
but also probably offers immense personal and professional fulfillment.
It's true. And speaking of fulfillment, let's talk about the potential impact a dance therapist can have.
Oh, yeah. Please share some inspiring stories.
So one example that comes to mind is in the guide, it talks about a dance therapist working with children with autism spectrum disorder.
Oh, wow. That's an area I'm particularly interested in.
Yeah.
What did it say?
So it discussed how dance and movement can be particularly beneficial for children with ASD,
Right.
as it provides that nonverbal outlet for expression and social interaction.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Sometimes words can be challenging.
Right.
And this is just a different way to connect and communicate. Precisely. And the guide described how this therapist would use movement games and these creative exercises to help the children develop their motor skills,
Wow.
improve their communication, and build those social connections.
I can only imagine how rewarding it must be for both the therapist and the child to witness those breakthroughs.
It is truly remarkable.
Ah.
And it highlights the power of dance to transcend barriers and unlock human potential regardless of age or ability.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
Oh, good.
I'm starting to see dance in a whole new light,
Good. I'm glad.
not just as a form of entertainment, but as a powerful tool for healing and self-discovery and connection.
And, as we kind of wrap up this section on becoming a dance therapist, there's one more point I wanted to touch upon from the guide.
Okay, lay it on me.
It really emphasizes this idea of movement as its own language.
Yeah.
And it even quotes Martha Graham,
Okay.
who said, "The body says what words cannot."
Wow, that's, yeah,
Pretty powerful.
really powerful.
Yeah.
We think of dance as entertainment, as maybe even a sport. But this therapeutic angle, it's like discovering like a hidden dimension to something I thought I knew.
Exactly. And it's like any language. It can be used to, express joy, process sorrow,
Right.
build bridges between people. It's incredibly versatile.
You know what's really sticking with me is that example of the dance therapist working with children with autism.
Yeah.
The idea that for some movement might be the key to unlocking communication and connection.
That's huge.
That's just huge. And it ties back to what we were saying about self-care for the therapists themselves.
Right.
Imagine the empathy and the emotional intelligence needed to do this work with such diverse populations.
Absolutely.
It's no wonder the guide emphasizes that aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
It's making me rethink even my own relationship with movement.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit I'm more of a walk around the block kind of person than a dance floor diva.
Sure.
But this has me wondering what I might learn about myself if I did try to maybe express myself physically more often.
And that's the beauty of it. There's no right or wrong way to explore movement. Maybe for you, it's that walk in nature, noticing how your body feels as you move.
Yeah.
For somebody else, it might be blasting music and just letting loose in their living room.
Ooh.
It's all about finding what resonates for you.
I love that this whole deep dive has been like a dance itself.
Really?
We started with my preconceived notions, then we explored all these new perspectives, and now I feel like I'm in a totally different place.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Right.
And it really speaks to the power of learning and curiosity.
Yeah.
We often think of knowledge as something we acquire intellectually,
Right.
but sometimes it's through experiences like this,
Yeah.
through exploring a new field, a new idea,
Oh,
that
yeah.
we truly embody knowledge and allow it to transform us.
Mic drop.
Right.
Seriously, that is a perfect note to end on.
I agree.
To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the artistry and impact of dance therapy.
Yes,
It's clearly more than just fancy footwork.
it is.
It's a journey of self-discovery, healing, and human connection. Until next time, keep exploring, keep moving, and keep those deep dive requests coming.